Hi everybody, this is Andre, and we have another Fairlight for you today. So this video is not any different from a previous video, except it's a different Fairlight. And as you know, every system has its own piece of history, and this is one of those. So that is the second system that was owned by Fiedel, the composer who stands behind the Terminator 2. And I'm really glad to tell you that after almost 3 years of repairing this system, it's now fully up and ready for sale. So let's talk about what is actually included, what's the configuration, because the configuration of every Fairlight is a little bit different, and there is lots of history of that. There is no two similar Fairlights in history because that was constantly evolving hardware. The constant adding of reworks, and usually the way it worked back in the day, you couldn't produce just a brand new system. Usually you took the parts that already existed, did some modifications, and so that created new revisions. And usually these modifications are really hand soldered, and in order to get the latest system, you have to apply all of these hand soldered modifications. Fairlight used to call them FCN, field change nodes. Yep. And this system has all of them applied to get to the latest revision of a CMI, which is revision 9. Now let's take a look what first included in the package, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the exact configuration of the mainframe. So, as usual for all my builds, everything that you see here is completely refurbished, down to the metal, and it has been painted. It has everything. Every single part in the system has been serviced. So let's start from the basic parts. Obviously, it comes with a music keyboard, which is fully painted here, so that's why I have some protection here on top, so I don't want to scratch it or anything. You'll see that the system has two monitors. One is a flat screen monitor, and then the original CRT monitor. And we will see both of them in the action and working. The system also has two keyboards, alphanumeric keyboards. One is the regular Apple keyboard, and another one is the MFX keyboard. A little bit about this MFX keyboard. This is very special. So that is one of the first ever versions ever produced. And the difference of that MFX keyboard, besides that it's very early and only compatible with certain versions of the software, that it has been designed for a different purpose. Later keyboards been designed for the digital disc recording, while this has been designed for the effects systems. So for that meaning, instead of arming the 24 of digital tracks that came out here later, during that very short time, Fairlight put the whole sensors here. So that's whole switch sensors. So what it means basically, it's velocity sensitive buttons that you could use to trigger the notes or trigger the effects. And that's how they first approached the post-pro, this type of idea that MFX, at that time MFX1, is actually as a post-pro system that used to, well, do some movie scoring, and that is a great example of it. So now about, actually you would ask why Fiedel had two Fairlights, because the first Fairlight that I restored I had been selling last year. So actually, in his production for the Terminator 2 Judgment Day, he used the two systems synced together, and the whole score was based on the two systems playback. So everything was actually running live to the multitrack and then mixed from a multitrack. But the main idea that one system wasn't enough to produce that massive score of a Terminator 2, and that's why the second system came into place. And usually the way, if we look at the original score, which by the way I restored all the data and I can see what actually happened here, one system was more designed for the percussion, other system was more for the long instruments like strings, brasses, and these type of long instruments without much changes in it. So now let's take a look on the main CPU mainframe. Okay, I'm opening it, and I just want to demonstrate here, first of all, what you can see. That is very obvious that there is an empty space here. And that's great, because all the memory that used to be based on this location has been replaced by the single board. This board is produced in Australia by Peter Wilk from Horizontal Productions, and that basically replaces all the memory cards with a single card that has 32 megabytes of memory. So that's a maximum memory configuration for this system. Then we have the what's called channel cards, and these channel cards, each card hosts 2 actual channels. We have 8 of them, so it's a 16 channels total, so that's maximum channel configuration for the card. And then the remaining of the compute cards, again, full configuration. So every single card, not just inspected, it got through the very special refurbish process and updating revisions one by one. So all the FCM field change notes has been applied to every single card in order to get to the final specs for that system. And that's critically important because you may find many systems in a field where you buy a Fairlight and it has like a whole zoo of different revisions of the cards, and system is not stable for that purpose because it's not a plug and play. You cannot take a card from one system and put it to another system without understanding what is a revision match, and that's critically important here. So that's for digital cards. On this panel, obviously, that's all brand new, and we will start the system and we'll see what it's doing. We have the temperature and a fan speed control, and there are 4 fan domains here and 2 fan domains on the back, so you can control them individually from the 6 potentiometers, and there are 6 independent temperature sensors that you can see the temperature. So this part is actually also very special because it holds the disk configuration for this system. So let's take a look. This is called SCSI2SD. This is replaces the hard disk in this system. So first of all, there is no more noise, but more importantly, it emulates the several hard drives at the same time, and so you have access to the massive disk capacity, whatever you want to do. The full factory library and some other libraries are coming with the system. I'm not including any sounds that belongs to Brad Fiedel IP. If you want to have it, you should contact him. I'll be happy to copy that for you. That's all has been restored. Also, this is SCSI2SD version 6, which is extremely hard to obtain these days, and that allows you to access the data through the SCSI bus, that is what it's intended for, and USB at the same time. So with some software tools, such as open source tools called CMI OS 9, or commercial tools such as chicken system translators, you can access to the data that resides here, and you can move in and out your data, such as WAV files, such as you may sample from this system and get the data outside and use it in your software samplers, or vice versa. You can get the data from the software samplers and put it straight to this system, with conversion, of course. So that's about the disk system. Now let's take a look on the back. On the back, we see the we see the sample module that is the original CMI 337 sample modules, which were from the beginning of the CMI era, and to my sound, they sound the best given the character of the Series 3 systems. There are several versions of that, so that is fully up to spec. Then we have 16 channels, again, each channel on a single audio card with its own filter and so on. So all of them have been calibrated to the specs. Then we have the what's called router. And the router, this is the ability to dynamically assign 16 channels that you can go straight out of the system to the 24 outputs. So think about that like you have a domain of 16 voices, and then with the router card you can dynamically assign it between the voices that you can play multiple voices at a time with maximum polyphony of all of that, 16. And this is how Brad Fiedel used that. So typically, from what I see from the sessions, he used only several outputs, like 8 outputs going straight into the mixer or multi-track tape that we used at that time. And the routing was done all in the software. All right, so that's about this system, nothing special on the backside. Then I mentioned we have 2 monitors, and the way we can run the system of the 2 monitors, because first of all we have this unit called Scaler. What Scaler is doing, Scaler is taking the original mono video output that goes to the green phosphor monitor, and it allows to recognize that special frame rate and convert it to the signal that then your standard flat panel can use. So that's That's a great find, and that's always comes as part of my system design, that you have option to use the standard monitor in addition to the original monitor. Then on top of a scaler, we have this unit. It's called USB to CMI. It has been designed by JobRate. I'm selling this unit separately, but basically this unit allows you to take your regular USB keyboard and mouse and attach it to the CMI. It runs a special protocol, and in many ways the original keyboards, well, basically they have been used and they ran out of resources. So with this type of unit you can run different keyboards, and actually in this system configuration that I will show later, you can run both of them at the same time. So you can run MFX keyboard and you can run the USB keyboard at the same time, and same applies to the screens. Finally, all my systems that I'm restoring, they come very carefully packaged. So this system is not the exception. We have 2 flat cases for the main unit and for all the peripherals, for all monitors and other parts. That comes together with the system. There's also a separate flat case for a music keyboard. That's not shown here, but basically that means it can go anywhere. It can go domestically in the US, I'm in Northern California, or it can go anywhere in the world. It will be fully protected with this class of cases. That's it. So now let's make a break. I will connect everything and we'll show you system in action. Thank you. Okay, we're back and now system is up and running. So that is its normal condition. As I said, you can control individually the fan noise and the fan speed. And here you can see the actual temperature running currently. So that's a bit, first of all, that's not hot here in the room. And so it's running very hot, and I just turned it on several minutes ago. But when it stays quiet within if it's a Celsius, within like a 30, 35 Celsius, that would be normal, and you can reduce the fan speed and make it quieter, even more quieter than it is now. I would say it's quiet already from how the system was originally designed from factory. Anyway, now let's take a look on how it's running. I first will show, so here's the original monitor. It's a great monitor, so it's fully refurbished, fully repainted, as I'm doing for every system here. So the chassis, of course, repainted, and all the parts repainted as well. And that's the case for the monitor. So not just being repainted, also it has been recalibrated. It's very stable and sharp screen. That's very important. So if you want to show off to somebody and show you the classic monitor, of course you can use it. For the actual system usages, I found that this monitor would be the perfect. It took me actually quite a long time to find the monitor that would fit the design of a system and would have very nice picture. Given that the picture is 4:3, obviously it has to be that format monitor, and this is absolutely great choice. So it's a glance surface, you can see how sharp everything here, and you can also find that it's in green. The reason why you can see the text here in green, even it's a monochrome system in that current configuration, is because of this little box. So it takes basically the all colors and leave only green color, and that's how you can see now everything is in green. If you want to go back to the how system would look like normally, you can connect it without that box, and that would be everything in white. I just found some customers really prefer that and enjoy that both monitors represent the actual look. But you see how great it is. So let's do the following. I loaded a sample, and let me show you the configuration. So we have one sample, we have all 16 channels. I will, first of all, we'll show you that all the channels are working. All 16, and that's basically how it's configured. Now you can use the router if you want to route it to the special output and so on. Basically, it makes no sense to go in a much deeper details, but that's how it's working, and at the end you can get a classic Terminator sound. Yeah. Also, a little trick about this keyboard. Let me show you. Let me create some test voice. As I mentioned earlier, so these are used as music triggers, and also, well, that's not quite normal for this type of MFX keyboards. You may decide you want to use it, or you may have it disconnected. That's totally up to you. I just found that is very interesting piece of history on its own. So finally, with the system, I'm also including several special cables. Well, some cables to bypass that monitor, so you don't need to run this CRT monitor all the time. You can connect your flat screen directly, so that's a cable for this purpose. There's also a snake cable, so that's the Japanese Chimera cable. I recommend you to revise these because it came originally with this system, and I would certainly revise it. But Fairlight are using the non-standard pinout, so that's not a DB25 Tascam pinout for the router output. It uses a special pinout. Of course, I will provide these details, or you can take it from this snake and just replicate or revise this snake and use it later. So that's pretty much it. If any questions, leave in comments. Systems is available right now. If you don't see the link to Reverb in the description, that means that system has been sold. I expect that it will go and sell quickly, as previous system did. So that's a one-of-a-kind opportunity. You will not have another opportunity like this to own Fairlight with a true history that impacted the whole music and film industry, I promise you. So I hope this system will find a good owner and good home for its future use. Make music. Goodbye.